Welcome to Handcrafted by G.R. Broussard. I'm Greg Broussard, and today we get the pleasure of working on this cradle. This cradle was made in 1991 by my brother-in-law's father. This cradle was made for my brother-in-law's and my sister's son, my nephew, and he stayed in this cradle. Now, my nephew is having a baby by the request of my sister. She wants me to refurbish this nice little piece. So the first thing I have to do is mark everything, and from looking at from the front, this will be the right, this will be the left, and front inside, back inside over here. And we got the basic parts marked. Let's take it apart. These parts are just held on by these screws, and so we can get these out without a problem. Real careful. Yep. There, guys. There we go. Excellent. Whew. I'm going to go ahead and scrape the rest of these parts off camera. Sanding really isn't getting the results that I want, so I'm going to try a little area with some stripper. This has been sanded. I'll just do a small section on this. This hasn't been sanded yet. It's just the way it was when I took it apart. Let's see what happens. I don't think this thing is flat anymore, my scraper. Got to flatten my scraper out. Let's see what this does. Well, I guess that is a little bit better than sanding. I think I'm going to have to strip this chemically. I sharpened and re-beveled the cutter on here. So we'll get a better stroke out of it. This board obviously isn't flat, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do all the parts and go back to sanding. This is the side I just stripped. This is the outside. This is the inside. I didn't strip, that's just sanding. This is sanded some, but not a lot. You can see the difference, so stripping it helps a lot. This is the inside. The inside is a lot easier to sand. It comes off fast. The outside is a challenge. So I'm going to chemically strip the outside of this, sand the inside, resand everything. So I'm going to continue. So this is one of the sides right here, side that's broken. And they really didn't want this fixed, but I suggested for them to fix it because this holds the front of the cradle on, and there has, structural integrity there. So This is the closest that I have in my stock. This has been drying for years and years and years. And I need to cut a piece, fit it in here, and then of course make the curve and all that. And I'm gonna have to cut all this out right here. So I'm gonna draw a line from here to here, and I'll cut a piece to fit that with the grain going the same direction. I think that's what we have to do in order to fix this. This replacement piece is bowed like this, and I think I can get enough of this out, and it's thick enough where I can flatten it so it will fit in our location. If this surface isn't flat, then I'm not going to get a straight cut on one side on the table saw. So I just want to make sure it's flat. So I think that's good right there. Okay, let's cut that. You can see it's bowed this way. So we're going to go ahead and flatten this out and put it to thickness. That's an app, that's a reference face. That's the side we did first. This is the side we're going to do all our measurements from. This is the side that I squared from this side on the joiner. And it looks like it worked pretty well. So now let's cut it to thickness. This is the piece that we're going for, the thickness, and it's just tiny bit proud. So I'm going to very carefully make this the same thickness, and I'm going to put it in the joiner, the planer. I'm going to plane it down just a little bit and then put it in the drum sander to get it to the perfect final thickness. You can see it sticking up just a tiny bit. Let's fix that. So what I've been doing is just running through this, through the planer, the thickness planer, checking it, running it through, and it's the last time, and then we'll do the drum sander. So I'm just taking a tiny bit off each time. And then we'll check it one more time right now. If you're not familiar with what a thickness planer is, these are the cutters here. They spin this way, and it's got rollers in there, and it feeds your material through, and you can adjust this whole carriage up and down, and you can get the board to the thickness that you want. That's what I did, and then now it's going to go on the drum sander. So we just barely hit it with this machine. Do this on my table saw, so I know it's flat. I'm just a tiny bit above that surface, so I'm going to use the drum sander to bring it down to my final thickness. If you're not familiar with what a drum sander does, there's a drum with sandpaper on here. It spins this way. This belt feeds the material in, and you can adjust this, and you can take super, super fine cuttings or sanding and making it flat at the same time, so you can precisely get the thickness that you want. This is the side that's not broken, so we're going to have to use this side to get the right measurements. And as you can see, like I said before, it's broken off right here. This is a thick enough piece to cover what we need to do. So I'm going to have to score a line at an angle this way, and then make the same kind of angle on this one to match that. Then we'll have to, once it's level, we know it's going to go there, we can cut the top flat, and then we should have a repair for that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer this mark to the other side, because when I cut this, I want to be able to follow something, at least for a guide on the other side, so I don't go off my line too much. The reason why I'm doing this in pencil is because I don't know precisely, exactly where I should razor it. So that's just a visual guide for me when I use my saw. So if you're not familiar with this, this is a leg vise, and the reason why it's at an angle is so when you put long boards in here, it can drop all the way down. You can get a good clamping pressure, and it's very adjustable. If off being to the side, the screw that goes through into the bench leg, the part that you're working on won't hit that. So you can offset that, drop the board down farther in this particular situation, and now I can come and I can cut this nice and easy. The leg vise has this pin board that I made for it, and you put a little dowel in there and there's holes, so when you close the vise, you can have it at different adjustability. So that dowel stops it at whatever distance I want and can cause great clamping pressure to my workpiece. You see me dropping my hand and sawing this way? That way it'll remove some of this material, and when I put it back, this already that I cut will guide the back of my saw, so I won't go into my line. Okay. All right, that's good. Now to finish this off with that angle, I'm going to come in with the number 5 and start working down to my line. You see how it's thicker over here, so I'm going to focus more on this side. Just going to work down to my line. Okay, that's my razor line right there. So I'm leaving a little bit. This is the board I've got to marry up to it. Okay, so I want this part of the board to be on the inside. This is the inside of the crib. So in order to do this, to make this match, I'm going to flip this down and I'm going to clamp this piece. We'll do it on this side. Clamp this piece right here with my razor line, and I'll plane both of these at the same time. Well, almost made a serious mistake. Before I plane this down flat, I have to mark the angle on this piece because I want the grain going the same direction. So I've got to cut this angle on this part here. Then I can plane it and then the grain will match. So what I've done is I put it on my table saw. I've used the other parts for spacers. One of the originals is underneath here, and I've got my, there's my board there, and I've got this set on here, so I know I've got enough room to cover the patch that I need to put in here. I mean, it's just so close. So I'm going to have to be super careful and mark this. This is the angle that I need to cut on here. Now I can cut this one on the machine. I'm going to stay away from my line, plane it down to my line, and then I'll plane it with the other part. This is a Stanley number 5. This is a 5.5. You can see how much wider the 5.5 is. I want that little extra width because these have to be planed exactly perfect. And when I open it back up, if I'm off at an angle one way or the other, it'll cancel each other out and it should fit flat on that, that surface. So I just have to take my time and plane these until they become flat together. Can't get it in over there. Okay, let's pray that this matches perfectly. It should go just like that. Whew. Made me a little nervous, but I think I got it. You can see how the grain follows through with that angle. So we can cut this to match the other side, to cut this flat. Again, I put it up on the table saw so I have something true to mark off of. And it looks like the patch just fits in there. And I'm just going to trace where this goes very carefully so I know where to cut it. Looks like she's ready to be put on. So let's go ahead and glue this on there. We'll dowel and glue it, and then we'll put the profile on here that needs to be on there to match the rest of the piece. Now I'm going to insert 2 dowels in here so the pieces will be aligned. It adds a little bit of strength, but it's more for alignment. So this is the dowel centering jig, and you clamp this onto your workpiece. It centers itself on your workpiece, and that line that I drew, you can see that white line on the part, on the tool is up there, lined up with the one that I put on there. And now I'm going to put a drill in here, and I'm going to drill down to the depth of that tape. That's the depth that I have, and I will move the tool over, and I will line it with my other line and drill another hole, and I will have 2 straight identical holes that will line and match each other up. I started second guessing myself. I was thinking, if I put that dowel driller deal on here and it's at an angle, this will be at an angle to my part. And so I got the dowels, I sanded them so I can move them in and out with my hands so they're not so tight. And I tried the part, and it fits. I knew that it would, but for some reason I was getting nervous. So I just did a test fit. So now I'm confident. We'll go ahead and put the real dowels in, and we will glue it together. I had to take all this off and rearrange my clamps, put some cawls on because it wasn't flat. It was clamping at an angle, but it's flat now. I put these on. I ran out of plastic tape, so I had to use the the paper stuff. But this is okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry. While this dries, I'm gonna sand. I've let this sit for about 45 minutes, and I'll take all this stuff off here. And we should be good to go. A little bit of glue squeeze out I didn't get out. It's flush, it feels good. So there's one thing I need to do. There's a little bitty broken spot right here. And before I profile this and make this flush right here, I'm going to put epoxy in this area here and let it dry. And it dries fast. So we'll do that first. I'm going to clean some of the slime out of there. I'll put a little epoxy before we sand it and profile this corner and make this part flush with this part. I just need a tiny bit of this. So I'm using this plate from my last project that I need to copy some shapes from. And I'm using one of my everything chisels for this. A little bit of hardener. Make sure I squish it all the way in there. Nice, good, clean. Well, that's squished. I flipped it over. The epoxy's on the other side. And again, I'm going to use my everything chisel to scrape this glue and to level these two surfaces exactly. And then I'll sand it. In conjunction with this leg vise, which has leather on the inside and the side of the bench, there's leather in there so it won't scar your wood. There's these holdfasts where you just hit them and they hold down. So in conjunction with this, you can set your piece on top of it and hold it down to your work piece, and it will hold it super secure. So while in this configuration, I'm going to use some files to file this flush and flat with the original piece. All these files just come from the antique places, super dirt cheap. You know, they're rusted, it doesn't matter, they still function, operate normally outside in some kind of crazy bin. And I just slowly collected files. That's where I get most of these. So I'm going to file this. You can see how this is sticking out just a little bit right here, and the corners aren't profiled. I need to make this the same level as this, and I'll come and profile these sides here. Don't know if I'm going to do that by hand or with a roundover bit. If I have a roundover bit that matches this, I'll use a machine. If not, I'll do it by hand. The epoxy is right over here, and it's still drying. It's a tiny bit sticky. Well, not sticky, but it's not hard yet. So while that still dries, I'm going to go ahead and work this surface and work this down. So I've got these two surfaces flush right here, and I just have to work on the profile. I'm going to wait a few more minutes because this epoxy on the other side right here that I put in there, it's still kind of a tiny bit squishy. So now I'm going to use the holdfast to hold the part down to my bench. The hole that goes into it's called a dog hole, and the holdfast goes in there and it binds itself on that hole. These were forged out of a round bar and flattened and made into a little leaf from a guy that I bought off Etsy, supporting small businesses, and they're really great holdfasts. Okay, now what I'm going to do is the epoxy I put down, I'm going to start getting rid of the bulk of the material with a file. This is our epoxy repair, and I filed front. So I'll have to come in, I'm going to use this router, and I'm going to route this, and I don't think it's going to match exactly because this profile is a little bit different, so I may have to come in and clean this up by hand, but I did match it to the best I could to the original profile on here, and it's a little shy, so we'll get as close as we can and then clean it up by hand. I've changed my hold down method again. This is a quick release vise. This is also called a dog. That's a dog hole. And this little block of wood down here is adjustable. That's called the dog. That's the dog hole. And this being the quick release vise is really cool because you can slide it in and out fast, and then you can go ahead and tighten it. Now I'm squishing my workpiece between these two dogs, holding it steady so when I route, it won't move. That's both sides routed, and it's pretty dang close. I can feel like a little lip right there, but I'm going to get a block of sandpaper, not even a file, and I'm just going to use a block to make that transition perfect. Oh, that's way better. This is 120 sandpaper just wrapped on a piece of wood. This is the epoxy side. I think that's blended in. Okay, awesome. Now I'm coming back with 220 and smoothing her out. Looks like there's one more thing to do. These are still real hard corners in the back of it. The epoxy part is down here. The curve is on this side. So this is the other side. And I'm just going to slightly come in with the sandpaper. And I'm going to break that corner so it's seamless between the old part and the new part. Just like that. Now this, you can't even feel the seam. So that's good. I'd forgotten to do that. The original craftsman did it. I'm doing it. Now it should match and blend just beautifully. Okay. The only thing left to do is the sand. So I'll be sanding for a couple hours. And we get to start the assembly process, and we have to be very careful not to, here's my screwdriver, not to rack this thing in any way. We don't want to break anything. Have to be nice and easy and gentle. It's assembly time, and I'm having a real struggle lining up the screws to the brass inserts. The only thing that I can think of is the wood moved while it was apart, and it wasn't lining up exactly where it should have been. It's the only thing that I can think of. I'm having a huge challenge with this front panel. I had to put this clamp in there, and I had to push the bottom of it out because I couldn't get this bottom one lined up, and I just pushed it out far enough to get it started. So now we'll have 3 panels on here. I've got to repair one of the panels, one of the screw holes, but this right here has been a booger bear. This is the last panel that I've got to put on, and this obviously is the part that has been repaired. So the screw went through the side through the front side and into that piece that's broken off. And this is the piece that's broken off right here, right? So it fit in like that. This is the hardware that will screw into this left side here. So I've got to screw this part down, this whole side down, get exactly where it needs to be with all the screws tight. And then I need to pop the, hammer that in to mark this piece so I can mount this hardware into the repair. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, we should be able to mark this top hole now for the piece of hardware. I'm going to mark exactly where this goes, and I'm going to do this with a 1/4 brad point. Brad point bit just means it's got that little sharp point on there, that little nipple thing. So I'm going to, it's real tight, so I'm going to put it in there, and you can see that this is sticking out some, so I have to force it that way. And I don't want it to do it too much because I don't want to break or put a bind on it, anything. You can see in that crack the tip of that bit coming through. That's how I'm going to mark this part, but I've got to force this over some. I have to be very careful and very gentle. I don't want to break the part that I just put on here. That looks like it's a consistent line about right there. Just viewing down, sighting down here, and then I will mark where the bit goes. Okay, now we have to take the whole thing apart. Again, I'm going to use the center doweling jig. I've got the depth of my part marked by my little blue tape, and I'm going to drill the hole for the hardware. I tried all kind of crazy stuff to get this in there nice and straight and even, and I made a little screwdriver out of the back of a tool that tightens the router bit up for the router, and I made that fit. I couldn't make one of these things work. So, but what I do have is tap and die. So I'm going to cut threads in here. Nice and easy. I worked on my test piece, so I should work on the real piece, right? I'm not going to use a drill because I'm kind of nervous about it stripping. To get it started in there, I'll cut threads. All right, that should be deep enough. Okay, now a piece of hardware and my screwdriver that I made. There we go. Now it's tight. Okay, now this is the scary part right here. Hopefully it'll line up when it does. Yes. Well, we got it together, and that definitely took some dangling. Now we have to mount it to the base. Attaching the screws from the inside to the base was pretty challenging. I spent probably the last 20 minutes doing that. I couldn't get them exactly aligned. I had to just take the base apart to do it separately because I couldn't move the base independently from each other while these were tight, and it was very challenging to do. I've got one more screw in here I've got to tighten. The problem was that I couldn't get them all aligned. There's 6 of the screws that go in here, and I couldn't get them all aligned all at the same time. So I had to loosen the base up. I tell you, it was It was a challenge, but I got it. This is the last one I got to tighten. And I think that completes it right there, besides the stain. Whew, okay. That was craziness. Now that we have it all assembled, I'm gonna come through with 220 grit, sand the whole thing one more time, and then we can stain it. It's now time to start thinking about stains. I did 3 different samples. This is the original color here, and this red chestnut 232 matches the best, the original color. And I put a coat of shellac on it because that somewhat changes the color just a tiny little bit. So this is what we're going with right here to match the original color. After staining a project like this, I get all my paper towels and I put them in a pile, and I'll move these over to the middle of the floor when I leave today, and I'll leave them spread out, and that way they won't start a fire, and then when they dry by the next day, I will throw them away properly. I've got the entire thing stained, and we'll come back and then we'll spray some shellac on there, and then when that's done, I'll come back and I'll put some grain in here, and then I'll color this a little bit better. And some of the blemishes in the wood, I'll come back and we'll do some Mohawk stuff on some of these other areas to kind of clean it up a little bit. But it's almost completely finished. I'm super excited about this. It looks really good. Finished the crib, put a little bit of shellac on here, a little bit of the Mohawk products. Repair came out really nice, and we're ready to deliver. They're going to be super happy. This is going to be ready for their baby shower. So I thought about something. These are the, gotta wait till the plane goes over now. That's awesome. We have the fan in the background. So what I'm gonna do now is get another pencil because that lead doesn't work.